Wholeness means to me being in a state of joy.
Wholeness means feeling complete, owning my authentic gifts.
Wholeness is really connected. Everything is connected to everything.
Wholeness is where we have access to all parts of ourselves.
Debi is such an inspiration. In her late 60s, she's still teaching spin class. She is maintaining her health, and her passion is really about the nutrition and the gut health and the movement. And those have been really important for her in her life, as she saw in her childhood some unhealthy ways of living. And there was a piece of her that said, I want to be different. And sure enough, she did. And she's made that part of her passion. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Debi. I learned a few things. You'll love her and her approach to helping you feel a more balanced life. And don't forget to rate and review the Wholeness Network podcast when you get a chance. Thanks for listening.
It all started in childhood, really. And the reason being is I call myself a processed kid. Mm-hmm. And that's because I grew up on processed food. I grew up on fried food, sugars, things with, ingredients that you have no idea because you don't know what it says on the label. You have no idea what it means. And I didn't know better. But what I did see, and I remember when you were on my podcast, we had this discussion, a brief discussion on this, but I did see the people I love around me going down for the count, and they weren't old enough to be going down for the count. And as I got older, through my early years and then through junior high and high school, as I got older, my father got sicker and sicker and sicker. So much so by the time he was 46, he passed away. And I was in college at the time, but only my second year. But other people in my family that were young were getting sick and going down for the count. And at the time, all I knew about food was that you could lose weight if you didn't eat a lot of it. That's all I really knew as a teenager. And exercise I wasn't really involved in sports. I really liked to dance. My mom there were only 4 kids, but she was too lazy to take me to a dance class. So my best friend I just vicariously lived through my best friend and went to all her dance shows and productions on big main stages and stuff. And here I was, like, just biting at the bit to want to perform and be on stage and get the movement in. So by the time I went to college, I was almost 20 pounds overweight. My dad was really sick. I had lost all but one grandparent. And my mom, who had an issue with prescription drugs, was not the best example of health and wellness. But the 20 pounds overweight was enough motivation the summer I went away to college to say, it's time to look good, maybe attract a guy, that I want. And I went on back then. So mind you, I went to college in the 70s. Mm-hmm. And back then there was the beginning of like these protein drink diets where you would drink, you put the powder in and you bring in a blender with, some kind of liquid, and you drink a protein drink in the morning. You'd have a salad with protein in the afternoon and then a protein at night. That's a tongue twister.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I lost at least 15 pounds doing that over the 3-month period that I was out of school and before I went off to college. And I was able to attract what I wanted. But in order to stay that way, because it's one thing to lose weight, and I guess we can get into this, with what I do later, but it's one thing to lose weight. It is another thing to maintain it because your bad habits change. So I had these horrible habits that I grew up with. Dessert was a reward, which it still is in this country, everywhere around the world, actually. And, when you go off to school, alcohol is also sort of a reward, or sort of, a long day at school, let's drink, so I had to be really careful about what I was doing, not to go back and do that again. And I became literally addicted to ice cream because I worked at 31 Flavors from between the ages of 15 and 17. And that's where I gained a lot of my weight, but also with the bad habits, those childhood habits. So for me, the motivation was to look good. And I went off the meal plan in the commissary immediately because all the food was yellow, and which right away made it processed. It all looked like food I grew up with. Frozen, that was, it looked so horrific. I didn't see anything green, and I knew that was the only way I was going to maintain what I had worked so hard for over this summer. So I went off the meal plan, and salad bars were becoming a big thing at like pizza places and stuff, to go and make your own in the 70s. And I lived on salad bars. I became a vegetarian. I'm not still, but I was then. And I was able to maintain the weight. I was able to feel good, look good, and attract the boyfriend that eventually became my husband. So that was my motivation. But what it also did for me was it cleared up my skin. It helped my hair to grow and my nails, because by the time I turned 21, I became a cocktail waitress, and I was always handing drinks, and I wanted to get good tips. So I wanted my hands and my nails to look good. And so the brain fog went away. So I noticed there were benefits. I also started playing tennis, and I realized there was a correlation, not just between what I ate and how I looked, but how I felt, how my motivation was, how my schoolwork actually got more. I was more motivated. I was doing better on tests. My sleep was better when I wasn't, doing the drinking thing in the dorms and in, the frat parties and stuff.
Yeah.
But I noticed that was the earliest I noticed the correlation. So fast forward, now I marry my college sweetheart. It was 8 years later, but I marry him, and I'm thinking I'm now into eating well and, staying fit and playing tennis. And I get pregnant within the first 6 weeks of being married, and I realize I don't want my kids to go down the path that I did, and losing their grandparents or a parent, God forbid, early. And at this point, my aunt, my father's sister, already passed away from breast cancer. And she had just turned 60. So I still, again, thought, that's it. That's all we get And there, again, the correlation between how you took care of yourself, what you ate, how you moved, how you slept, had a lot to do with whether you were healthy or not, meaning warding off, being preventative, keeping disease out. How could I change that trajectory of what my family was going through? Because their spiral was like this, and I wanted my kids to do this. So in my 30s, now, mind you, after college, I got into the film industry, and it was very stressful, and stress plays a big part. So I, was living, there was a little bit of adrenaline and adrenal fatigue for me during those years. And I took about 15 months off after I had my first daughter, but it gave me time to really focus on what it was that was important to me, and it was her health. And so I had a natural childbirth, 100%, no drug, no person, nothing touched me until I was ready to push. And I did that with both of my children. I breastfed them both for 2 years each. There's controversy over that. I don't care. I gave them the best start. And I, tried to keep a really healthy diet, made my own baby food, tried to keep them away from sugar until they went to a friend's house for a play date. And then it was like, I would get from mothers saying, my oldest daughter, Marissa's in our food cupboard. She's found the M&Ms and the licorice, because she was discovering stuff she had never had. I realized there had to be a balance, and, get that through. But I started taking spin classes and going to the gym right away. I joined a gym after I had my, in between my first and my second child. I started doing it. Back then, it was all Jane Fonda kind of stuff. But some of the gyms that I was going to had equipment. So I hired a trainer to help me out on the equipment, so I understood body parts and muscle groups and all of that. And I got really into the spin craze in the early 80s in the early 90s. And by 1996, I became an instructor. Now, mind you, I'm still a commercial producer, so they're overlapping. So I find myself on the sets talking to people, would come up to me because they knew a year later, I became a personal trainer too. So people would come up to me and ask me, what should I be doing? What should I be eating? How should I be working out? And I became sort of the advice column on the set to help other people. And fast forward, after 26 years of being married, my last daughter just graduated college, and my husband and I split up. And at that point, he's a director, and I was producing for him. So I all of a sudden, thought I'm gonna go back to school. I tried to get producing jobs with directors I was producing with before. This all television commercials. These are usually jobs that last about a month, and then you're freelance and you go and try to work with another director. But I said no to everybody when my kids were young and only produced for him. So I could kind of control the narrative of being a mom. I tried to do everything. Tried to be a wife, a mom, and work these big heavy duty jobs. And it was, again, stressful and a little hard to balance, but at least I had the good self-care lifestyle, behind me, because I had changed those really horrible habits to good ones. And I also gave them to my children as they were growing up. And they are both, my oldest daughter is like a professional dancer. So both my kids got to dance and go through the Royal Academy of Dance, and they're both professionally trained. And I realized, that I had a huge passion for health and wellness, but I didn't have the education in the nutrition part. So in 2016, which was a good 3-4 years after my marriage fell apart, I went back to school and I got my certifications in health and nutrition coaching and hormone coaching. And so now I have a business called Balanced Life by Debi, me. And I help people where they're at. So if they just want the personal training, and they get the added nutrition stuff because they always ask me questions because they know, I give them that. If they just want the health coaching, I give them that. I work both with Zoom and I work one-on-one. I still teach spinning. I've never stopped teaching since 1996. I teach 2 classes a week minimum. That's what I'm on the schedule for. And I teach at a yoga studio. I teach body sculpting for yoga at a yoga studio.
Wow.
So I stay busy doing that, and it is a huge passion for me. I'm continuing to expand my education and my passion. My big and I think I mentioned this also when you did my podcast, is I'm trying to get a women's health magazine off the ground. And what it is, it's going to be similar to what I do in my podcast, bringing in professionals that come from all healthy walks of life, whether it be a product or a service or whatever it is that they are an expert at. I want to bring them into the show, celebrities included, as long as it's a health and wellness subject. I want to bring them on the show. I'm in the process of putting together a 10 series show called Every Woman. And it's a women's health magazine that we're going to do on YouTube. I'm actually going to produce it with Tony, who is the owner of Universal Broadcasting Network, who produces with me my podcast. And, we're going to be actually sitting in a living room setting and going out in the field and cutting pieces in and really digging into what it takes to live a life of longevity with quality. Because that's passion.
Wow, I love it. I want to go back to that young you. I mean, I feel like that's a big moment for you to be in the middle of this lifestyle that you talk about, and yet you were able somehow to step out of it and see what was happening. How do you think you were able to do that? What was that?
That's a good question.
I feel like there was something more there for you to be able to see beyond what was just right in front of you. So I feel like there's a calling there, there's almost there was a calling for you to kind of come into this space. And do you know what that was like, or are there any moments that pop up when I ask that question?
Well, the thing that popped up was my early childhood, because my father got sick when I was 5 years old, and watching a man who's barely 30 in the kind of pain that I saw him in really resonated with me. I mean, I would hear him moaning, eventually, I mean, after all of the treatments, first off, he was diagnosed late because he didn't go to the doctor. So that was the first thing. And second, his lifestyle habits were horrible. He was smoking, he was drinking, he was overeating. There was no attention paid to health. It was just living life in his probably estimation to the fullest. And I remember when about a year before he died, he was in the hospital. He started getting different organs and things removed one by one because the cancer was spreading. And I remember going to UCLA Medical Center, and he was in his hospital bed. He had just had his spleen removed. And mind you, everything leading up to this for, he kind of lived with it for 15 years, really. And everything leading up, I saw pain and suffering. And I said to him when he was sitting in this hospital bed, he was smoking a cigarette, it was down to the stub. And I said, Daddy, you got to quit doing that. You can't smoke in here. And those are things that are going to kill you. And he said to me, no, you don't understand. Without this, I'm already dead. So he wasn't willing to give that up, which in turn took his life from, I say, more than half his life away. For me, that was a turning point because it said to me, I'm willing. I'm willing not to keep eating the way I'm eating. I'm willing, at that point, I was already a year into just, because I went to college and wanted to be thin, but that's when I started to think about the health and wellness part of it. The other thing was once I lost the weight and started to feel good, that correlation between eating but well, eating less, and moving along with it made me want to live in that body, not just physically,
Right.
but emotionally. And, that was how I wanted to set forth in life because I didn't want to moan and groan and have my kids hear me do that. As much as I could within my, the epigenetics plays a huge part. Epigenetics, as you know, has so much to do with your lifestyle, not just with, genetics is really just, like 10% of what we deal with in life. The other 90% we have control over. And I didn't know that then, but I definitely felt it. And that was a turning point for me. Those I'll never forget the noises and the pain. Just for him to urinate was painful. Living in the house with him being so in pain was excruciating for my siblings. And for me, I couldn't continue that.
Yeah. And what a powerful moment that was, because what he was really telling you is that this pain over here was better than this pain over here. Do you know what I mean? Like he was telling you, he was saying, if there was something, I mean, that's what addiction does, is it's a difficult thing over here because we're trying to numb or forget about or calm down the nervous system over here. It shows the amount of pain he was in, emotionally, that physical pain, or the thought of that physical pain felt a better choice. That's so, for so many people, that's with, we don't think about it that way, but that's really what's going on. It's something that's why the health and the wellness, like they both, I love that you always use both of those words, because it's not just health, it's also wellness too. It's also the internal, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual thriving that we're trying to get to. And one of those first lines of defense is our bodies. That's the communicator. The body tells us what's going on. And we can also tell tell our other parts through the body, through the food we eat, through the movement that we have. We can reprogram it that way. That's just kind of how it works. We send the message to, I think for you, like your spinning class keeps your heart in good working order and all of those things, but it also tells yourself I'm important. It also sends other kinds of messages being in that class. And it's important to talk about those things. It's important.
I mean, now I wear it as a badge of honor because I'm 66 years old. And I don't know anybody my age that teaches spin. I mean, I'm sure they're out there.
Amazing.
I just don't know them. And, you know, so, and I see 20-year-olds struggling who don't have the cardio capacity that I do. You know, obviously I worked for it. I built it up
Right.
time, but now it is my badge of honor to be a role model for them.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's sort of like, and I do say this in my class, and I probably shouldn't, but I'm like, come on, you guys, if I can do it, you can do it.
That's
I'm
right.
always the oldest one in class too. I
That's
mean,
amazing.
occasionally there's somebody older than
Yeah.
me that, you know, is an athlete and is, but for the most part, I'm the oldest, and I'm
Wow.
the one sitting up on the platform and with the microphone, and you know, so I wear it as, you know, I
Yeah.
want to be a motivator. I want to be an inspirator. You know, I now I lead by inspiration, because most of my, not most, there's a couple of my clients are older than me, but all the rest are younger. And I just want to lead by example. And
Yeah.
so it does, it feels really good. I mean, it's not just the physical benefits from it, you know, the mental, but also there's this real, the joy, you know,
Yeah.
emotional benefits are very, very pleasing. So
Yeah, I mean that is an inspiration, because the fact of the matter is to if I want to have that kind of joy, then I'm going to do that's just putting I've got to put the money in the bank now, and that's where we've got to understand kind of, where how we show up with our physical bodies. And and it starts out a lot of times, mine too. Losing the weight is part of the inspiration, but then all of a sudden I learned so much about myself, losing the weight. I learned so much about how I need to, what shows up for me and how I reacted to it. I remember one time, I was pretty good about, like, same with you. You had your shakes, I had my system that I was able to follow. I was good at following the system. But one day I was waiting for my youngest to get out of preschool, and I was sitting in my car and I was just feeling it. And I was just feeling, down. I was like, what's going on? And the thought occurred to me, I thought, oh, this is the day I would have gone home and made chocolate chip cookies. And there's nothing wrong with chocolate chip cookies, but it was just this moment of saying, I'm feeling it. And I would have gone and made cookies to make myself feel better. And instead, I just sat there for a minute in the car waiting, and I just felt sad. You know what I mean? Like I just felt sad and knew that, and then once I felt I felt better. Once I actually felt that feeling, I actually felt better, where going and making the cookies would have been my distraction. It would have stopped me from feeling what I was really feeling. And I needed to move that emotion. Emotions, we're never going to get rid of all our emotions. They flow in and out, and sometimes they're in. And
yeah,
in order to get them out, they've got to flow out. Emotions are never, they're usually, if they're usually temporary. If they're not, then we have other questions that we need to ask, but
got to recognize it,
right. But
like the source. Yeah.
right, but to allow that feeling to express for a little bit. And I was surprised at how well that worked. Like, I actually just stayed sad for a little bit, and then I was okay, instead of needing to make it go away.
Yeah,
So,
well, you were kind of mourning the loss of making the cookie,
yes,
you know, but in a good way,
right.
it's a good way. But it takes a lot, because, sugar's addicting, number one, it's an
Yeah,
addiction.
yeah,
And like what I was saying earlier, that sugary things, cookies, candies, sugary drinks, ice cream, all of that are rewards.
right.
So there's that mental thing that says, I'm not worthy, I'm not rewarding myself anymore.
Yes.
And you have to switch the dialogue, you've
Mhm.
got to change that conversation around that you're actually doing a good thing, not a bad thing. You're not, the
Mhm.
reward is that you're not doing it, not that you
Mhm.
are doing it. And there's an emotional feeling and response
Yeah.
attached to that,
Mhm.
because you that's not what you're used to. I mean, and I
Right.
think the hardest thing is what I was saying earlier again, is habits. They're so hard to break. And that's where coaching, a good coach comes in.
Yes.
You know, and where I recommend to anybody, whoever it may be, wherever you go to find that is important. You know, the Tom Brady's of the world wouldn't be the Tom Brady's without a good coach behind them, because
Right.
whatever he did or does to be the GOAT, he still has somebody prodding him on to take it that up here. And most people that come to me, some have an event that they want to, you know, get in shape for, both with what they're eating and exercising, but most want a lifestyle change. And they're sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Right.
And they realize food is medicine, medicine is food, movement can give you longevity, but they're not motivated enough by anything, or have, you know, somebody with good suggestions, with good, you know, bullet points that help them day in and day out to be sustainable for whatever food changes they may have to make. And I have this saying of crowding out. So, and it's not just with food. Mostly I use it with food, but to crowd out the good with the bad. So, you know, the biggest loser mentality doesn't work. We're going to go to boot camp. We're going to do this for 4 or 5 days or weeks, even a couple of weeks. You're going to lose 100 pounds. You're going to start eating healthy. We're going to give you 1,300 calories a day, and boom, you're, you know, and then they show you the before and after. That's great for a moment. It actually can be very dangerous, but it also isn't sustainable. So for me, it's like, let's get rid of those old habits and gradually bring in the new, that will be sustainable over a period of time, but by crowding out the bad with the good. And whatever that may be, whether it's, you know, it's a sugar habit, and trying to eat. I have a client now who just, you know, she's eating handfuls of M&Ms and popcorn and sitting down and watching all her shows with popcorn every night, basically because it's a habit. And so, you know, rather than say, stop it, you've got to stop eating the sugar and you have to stop eating the popcorn. It's like, what if it's a handful of popcorn? What if we start with 1 or 2 handfuls and eventually work our way down on that? And then I gave her some dark chocolate. There's a great brand called, I think it's Human, Hue. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah,
I think so.
Good brand. It's very, very low sugar. It's got like 2 ingredients, because cacao is actually good for you.
Right.
It's all the other stuff and fillers and emulsifiers and heavy sugars that they put in. So, you know, I said, here, go to the dark chocolate choice, do this. It should be 70% or more cacao, and the less sugar, the better, and no other ingredients except for, you know, something that binds it, but that's not a chemical. And, you know, she says it's made a huge difference in her life. And eventually, hopefully, she won't want the popcorn anymore.
Right.
Dark chocolate, so be it. That's your, you know, if you think you need an indulgence like that, then that's fine.
Yeah.
But if I would abruptly tell her to stop it, there's no way that would have worked.
Right.
No. And a lot of people aren't willing to make those changes. It's too hard. You know, like you said earlier, addiction is there's an emotional component to it. There's something that you bring up when you go to the French fries and you go to the sugar retreats. It's a bigger for my dad to have the cigarettes and not take care of himself. He had to mask the pain somehow, and that to him was the way to do it. That's where, you know, when you know if you can admit that you need the help, you know, that's where people like us are there to help you.
Yeah, the word, it's like support, because I think the image that comes to my mind, you know, sitting there watching the popcorn, and I've been there, you know, like I'm not actually tasting or experiencing the popcorn. I am just shoving it in my mouth. And that's what it's just to kind of bring in some mindfulness, where it's like maybe you have 1 handful of popcorn, but you actually enjoy that popcorn, or, you know, like you're mindfully eating it, you're paying attention, you're chewing on purpose. Then you're adding in happiness and joy and that savoring. They say that happy people, that's one of the major differences between people that would consider themselves happy, is that they savor. And savor isn't just about the kind of food. You can savor any kind of food, but it's that action of savoring and making something special. If I had gone home that day and had a I would probably have one chocolate chip cookie, and it would be so good. It would taste so good versus what I had done in the past, where it was like, there's this need, there was this deep need inside me. There's this like longing that I'm trying to fill with chocolate chip cookies, that I wasn't even tasting or not experiencing. Big difference. So when you feel that difference inside, and it's that emotion, it's empowering. I'm sure for her to enjoy that movie with a little bit of popcorn or just that chocolate, like that's empowering. And to come at it from that angle, rather than just like you say, just saying, don't do that, that's bad. Like there's a big difference in the motivation behind it that can make all the difference.
Yeah, it isn't just what, like you're saying, the mindfulness isn't just what you eat, but how you eat.
Right.
There, in the Ayurvedic world, it's like where you eat, when you eat as well, like making your warmest meal of the day lunch, so you're not eating hot food at night. And just it's that forces, and I guess that's a harsh word, but it does create mindfulness, because there's certain types of food you should eat certain times of the day. And that in itself is creating mindfulness. And then how you eat, where you eat, whether it's in front of the TV or standing at the counter, or are you sitting down at the table and turning your devices off? That all makes a difference to your overall health. Now, to introduce that concept abruptly again to a client is tough. So it's small little changes. And the same client, one of the things I did say to her is, how do you feel? She was either eating like a pint of ice cream or like, a ton of M&Ms at night. And I said, how do you feel afterwards? What does it make you feel like? Are you really feeling rewarded or satisfied? And she goes, no, I feel horrible. Not only physically, but mentally, I'm mad at myself. I said, so do we want to continue being mad at yourself, or do you want to be proud and feel good? And this particular client has a smoldering cancer right now. So the way which is why I'm working with her, and the way she takes care of herself is going to make all the difference in the world. You have to treat your mitochondria well, which is the power pack in our cells. And, that's where cancer goes and spreads, and that's what's monitored constantly. So why not feed them in a healthy way rather than a destructive way? And
right.
yet it's easier said than done. So that's why those little small changes, those little small things that you could do. I mean, one of the things that every cancer patient and every person should be doing is drinking half their body weight in ounces a day. And that's just a start or a given. If you're an athlete or you're doing what I do, a high intensity interval spin class that burns 600 calories in an hour, you might need a little more. But dehydration is a catalyst for disease. So you got it. This is right by my side. I drink a couple of these, because a couple of these a day is half my body weight in ounces.
Yeah.
Keep refilling it with a good filtered water, by the way. And just plain water. And a lot of people, I have some clients go, oh, I hate water. Ew,
Yeah.
I can't stand it. And again, okay, start with half a glass and try not to get that mantra in your head, because again, it's a mental thing that you don't like it. Try to start doing some positive feelings around water, because it could save your life. It could be the difference between, disease or not disease. So, but I don't want to drill that into them that they have.
Right.
I just want to remind them that they should. I give all my clients get this little journal. It's not so little, but it's a journal that really asks you it's not just a food log, but it's for your water intake, it's for your mood, it's for your activity, it's for your creativity, it's for how are you fulfilling all the things that feed us in life to create the joy that you're talking about, which in turn creates the longevity. How is each day looking for you? And why? And it's so easy because it's just one-liners. It's just
Yeah.
one word if you want for each thing it asks. And then that you go back at the end of the month and you look over and see what looks alike. What word is there something that stands out that looks like, oh, here's the day I had a headache because the night before I had cake and champagne or whatever, so you can see here I didn't exercise for 3 days and I was feeling lethargic by the fourth day. You can see you have accountability, not just from me, your coach, but from yourself. You give yourself, it's the best tool I have. It's that I send to every single client that I have. And most of them, I don't want to say all of them, but most of them keep up on it and then give me a glimpse into their month. And I think it's important.
Yeah. To me, the thing that comes to mind is, is nourishment. I mean, that's really nourishing all of who you are. Nourishment is more than just food. To me, that's care and kindness and lovingness and paying attention to those parts inside of you that have something to say, like, so getting them, being able to track that is really valuable. That's really valuable. So how does that transfer, or what about, let's move over into the idea of hormones. Tell me how you work with hormones and what you know about that.
Well, they dictate pretty much everything. There are good mood hormones, bad mood hormones. I mean, they're gut related. So food really has a huge, huge, huge role to play in hormonal reaction. So, for women, we go through hormonally, what we go through is obviously different than men because we have menstrual cycles and then we go through perimenopause and menopause. And, balancing hormones are difficult to do. And before you go through the perimenopause and the menopause stage, you can do it through lifestyle. And that's really what I've learned about, adrenal fatigue affects your cortisol levels. Cortisol is the stress hormone. You can't, if you're stressed out and your adrenals are fatigued, you're not going to be able to sleep. If you don't sleep, your health value is going down here. So how do we, through lifestyle changes, and again, those gradual changes that eventually become long-term ones, how do we work with you? Again, I work with my clients where they're at, whatever their deal is, to change those cortisol levels. How do we make that? What is it that you're first, I dig in deep with people to see what it is that they're eating. They do a food log for me, what it would and how, and how, some people over exercise. So I need to see how they're moving. What's your lifestyle like? Give me a day in, day out. Are you meditating? Are you stopping? Are you giving yourself a good 10 minutes a day for just you, especially those young, busy moms that I have? And what is it that you're taking the time for that satiates you and helps you relax so you're not living in adrenaline? So, so I help people with that. That's what I find the most, is that people who are stressed out have adrenal fatigue. That's what I see the most. I do have women that are going through menopause that have gained weight because as we age, everything slows down. And one of the things that we do is we lose hormones, I know this too well, being in my late 60s. I didn't go through menopause until I was 59. So it was just 7 years ago. But I noticed shortly after that, I got all the symptoms of low estrogen and progesterone. And so I did have to go on bioidentical hormones to fix that. It made a huge difference.
Yep.
because our libido goes down,
Yep.
our motivation for things to go down. I mean, our heart rate slows down every year once we get past age 60. So everything slows, our capacity to build muscle.
Mm.
But we can gain weight, but we can't gain muscle as easily. I mean, so everything we eat, our digestive tract slows down. So everything we eat is, again, got to be even more mindful than it was when we were in our 20s, 30s, and 40s, because our body is digesting it a lot slower. And we need to use food again as medicine and as fuel, and we got to get the vitamins, minerals, and the nutrients we need out of it, which is why the older we get, the more mindful we should be about what we are putting into our bodies and how we are moving our bodies and stuff. I talk about this because my body sculpting class, we use bands, we use weights, we use discs, we use little balls and magic rings and all kinds of, we even use the wall as a prop. We use things, to work and use our own body weight to push against, and then free weights as well. But I always tell people, think about where you are. How often do you do this? Be very careful. Meet yourself where you're at in this moment and work your way up. And because that class tends to be, again, not 20-year-olds, but they look at someone like me, see that I have muscle, even in my late 60s, see that I can maintain a healthy weight, and that my hair and my nails and, my skin, that's the other benefit of taking care of your self. You don't have to worry about all spending $1 million on products. Your body will take care of it for you, especially if you drink water.
Yeah.
So, I think it's important that people understand, you want to, when we're working out and we hit that hormone, that the feel-good hormones that we have, that comes with feeling satisfied. That comes with eating food that helps to activate them. It also, you can, get into that. What's the hormone when you're working out and you get that high?
Is that oxytocin? Is that oxytocin?
Well, oxytocin is one of them, but not so much from working out. I don't know why that just
went out of my mind too. Not oxytocin.
but anyway, so that hormone to activate that, that comes with kind of the high intensity interval stuff. That's the personal high. It's your body is responding. It's a drug that your body secretes.
Yes.
Give you a satisfaction of happiness. And if your lifestyle isn't allowed to secrete that hormone because you're blocking it through eating bad, not exercising, medications, and not sleeping, you're not going to get that feeling again of joy and health and
right.
going to crave that. A quick story, when I first got into the whole exercise thing, I had I think it was I had to go through surgery because I had hernia. So I didn't get to work out for like 6 weeks. And I actually went into, endorphins. That's the I was thinking of. I actually went into a little funk, right? Well, I was addicted to secreting the endorphin hormone that gave me the high from working out, from the high intensity intervals. And that addiction, I was having a reaction to, from
like
not
withdrawal. Yeah.
Withdrawal. That's it.
Yeah.
So I asked my doctor, I'm like, what's going on? He goes, oh, you're withdrawing. Your body's going through withdrawal. He said, but the good news is that all you have to do is start working out again. And, muscle has memory and everything will come back just the way it was before you started. And I was like, oh, hallelujah, and sure enough, he was right. But I didn't know that. And it was something that, I studied further after he had told me that. And, those are things that's how we regulate our lives, is through our hormones. And we can do it in a good way or a bad way. Our thyroid secretes a hormone that can harm us or heal us And so we want to keep our thyroid healthy. And that's why we don't want to tax our adrenal glands. And that's why we do want to activate the good hormones. So our thyroid stays stabilized. And part of doing that again is with diet, having a good metabolic health, which means having a balanced blood sugar. Because when our blood sugar is off, that's what activates our thyroid. And then thyroid disease comes with diabetes, type 2 diabetes. And type 2 diabetes has to be controlled with adding insulin into your life. Who wants to do that when you can? That's avoidable, 100% avoidable through lifestyle. So
just to kind of pull back on that idea of this adrenaline fatigue, because I think we hear that, but I just kind of want to pause and talk about kind of what that is. And so I'm going to tell you what I think it is and tell me if I'm correct. So
okay,
I think what goes on is, so let's say we're moving through life and the energy that we need for our life is, we're living a little bit above our energy. So we're pulling from those like the adrenaline and things like that in order to maintain our lifestyle. So we're pulling more of those in than, so we're living higher than normal, or, than average, I guess. And so because we're running those systems higher, it's almost like running faster than we can, then those tire out, and then they don't give us the adrenaline that we need, or the dopamine, or I don't know if those are all included. That's a question I have.
Dopamine is happy is another good.
Yeah, the endorphins, like, so then all of a sudden we lose that ability to get those kinds of hormones to help us, because we've overrun the system, because we've needed them more than it's kind of like moving faster than we can, run faster than we can, or whatever that's called.
Yeah,
is that right?
Your mind is running faster
Yeah.
than you physically can, and that you should be doing for your health. Yes. And that's when we have to start pedaling backwards.
Right.
And look at the things that might be contributing to that. So those are, that's why they call my business Balanced Life. So what's out of balance? So I have this thing, the circle of life, that I have all of my clients fill out before we even start. And what it is, it's a circle, and there are 12 lines in the circle, and each one, actually probably have a picture of it here. And each one will say career, one will say creativity, one will say relationships, one will say home environment, sleep. Let's see what else. Everything, food is separate. Food is a whole separate deal, because again, I use that as a healing factor, like medicine. But there's all these little things, and then they put little dots, like if you go down to, so there's these lines that hit the bullseye in the middle. The closer you get to the bullseye is the worse, and then out to the spikes on the outside of the circle is good. And then we connect the dots, and right away finances are in there, and right away I can see what's going on. Spiritual life is in there.
Yep.
That's way down. And that's where we start. That's where we start. We get to the basic stuff like water and diet and sleep, but what's down? Okay, finances are down here. So they're stressing about that. So now they've got 3 jobs, so they can, make their bills and their rent. So how do we backpedal? What do we have to do? So you're not stressing, because stress, that's causing the stress.
Right.
Because your finances are down here. So now you're working, you're overtaxed, you're not having time to exercise, you're eating fast food. Where do we make some changes? Small, sustainable ones, again, at a time. And that's with each and every client. I look at that to see where to start. And then once we start bringing those things back up, so they all, nothing's going to be 100% all the way out.
Right.
But we start to see where the deficits are and how we can bring them up to, instead of a negative, to a positive. And that's why on my health coaching programs, I suggest, they don't have to be, because I'll customize anything, but they're 6-month programs, because they take a while to change. Adrenals don't just suddenly change. And then there's, naturopaths that suggest certain herbs and things depending on what it is that is going, we have to do labs. I personally don't do the labs, but I recommend who you should go to do the labs. And then we find out where, what's going on with the blood work. And then we can manipulate the hormones back to the healthy level where they should be. But you got to backpedal when somebody's overworking like that and overdoing. And if they're living in an adrenal fatigue, they're setting themselves up for probably an autoimmune disease, could be cancer, could be heart problems, because if you're eating fast and you're not metabolizing your food, you're gonna clog your arteries. You've got to get your systems, all that's a big deal, is that all your systems are working in congruency with each other and working well. And it really does start in the gut, and that's the gut-brain connection that says, okay, what is my goal? What is we've talked about this, what is my why? And what do I have to do to make those changes? And then work with somebody who can help you do it one little step at a time.
Yeah, I think that's what you're so great for and helpful with, is that coaching. It really is helpful to have somebody tell you, you can do it, or I got your back, or I understand, or what can I do to help you, instead of having to figure it all out for yourself, to have a coach that cares for you and helps you nurture yourself, like not just the self that's here now, but the self that's 20 years from now. Let's nurture. And you might even have to go back in time and nurture some of their younger selves. I'm sure that's come up too.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah. Innately, they really know what they need to do.
Yeah,
and they know the source of why they're doing the sabotaging.
Yeah.
Let them figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's a listening skill.
Yeah.
So as a coach, that. So
that's great. Yeah. Yep. That's really great. That's really great. Well, health and wellness, is, aligns with the wholeness that we are trying to create. But we always ask our guests, to tell us a little bit about your definition or your understanding or just your unique perspective of the idea of wholeness.
Well, I think wholeness is balance in what we were just saying. I think ultimately, we want to be loved. We want to feel loved. That's part of our joy, our happiness, our longevity. But to create wholeness, we have to have all the elements meet in a logical place, meaning, your mental, physical, spiritual, and social well-being, I should say, is all interconnected. And, to get the balance in that, what I was saying earlier, all those little things that come together that may have to shift to get them to align. I think alignment is wholeness. And whatever lights you up, the things that you need to do to get there, I think should be a goal to get there and become a whole, full, best version of you.
I love that. That's a great answer. That's a great answer. Feel empowered every day with wholeness videos, meditations, downloads, classes, and more by joining the Wholeness Library at thewholenessnetwork.com.